can't buy. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sand. And right now, I feel like 100 grand.
You are listening to Inspired Insider with your host, Dr. Jeremy Wise.
Dr. Jeremy Weiss here, founder of InspiredInsider.com, where I talk with inspirational entrepreneurs and leaders. Today is no different. I'm here with Joel Erway, the founder of the Webinar Agency, and I'm going to formally introduce Joel in a second. Joel, I always like to mention other podcast episodes people should check out, okay? And so I had one with Ian Garlic, who we both know, and he has a company, Video Case Story. He talked about his dad opened a restaurant and they had live dolphins inside the restaurant. So it kind of gets the creative juices flowing of how do you market your business. I had Todd Taskey on, who talks about how do you sell your agency. So that's what he does. He kind of takes private equity with agencies and helps sell. And he has the Second Bite podcast. So sometimes the people make more on their second bite than they make on their first bite. And I did an episode with Jason Swank as well. He talked about how he kind of ran and built up an 8-figure agency and then sold it. So check those out and many, many more. And this episode is brought to you by Rise 25. At Rise 25, we help businesses give to and connect to their Dream 100 relationships. And how do we do that? We help you run your podcast. You know, we are an easy button for a business to launch or run a podcast. Joel, you know, for me, the number one thing in my life is relationships. I'm always looking at ways to give to my best relationships. And I've found no better way to do that over the past decade than to profile the people and the companies I most admire and have them on my show. So if you've thought about podcasting, you should. Joel has 2 podcasts, which we'll talk about. Go to rise25.com or email us support@rise25.com. And if you haven't heard of Joel Erway, he is the founder of the Webinar Agency. He helps build high converting sales presentations and webinars for their clients. He's worked with people like Russell Brunson of Clickfunnels and many, many more. He's author the book of high ticket courses to show experts how to create leveraged offers so they can scale their business to programs valued at $2,000 or more. And between his own personal sales and his clients, he's helped generate over $100 million over the past few years alone. And I mentioned he's a host of 2 podcasts, Sold with Webinars, check it out, and Experts Unleashed. Joel, thanks for joining me.
Jeremy, pleasure to be here, man. Thanks for having me.
So tell me about the Webinar Agency and what you do.
We work with primarily thought leaders, coaches, and consultants, service providers. We help them design offers to, generate, design high ticket offers, and we help them generate leads and sales for it. So that is what we do in a nutshell. Primarily, we use some form of sales presentation as our mechanism, whether that's a long form traditional webinar that most people are used to, could be a short 5 to 10 minute mini webinar, or it could be something that we've recently launched called an infocast, which is very similar to a podcast, but it is specifically designed to generate leads and sales. So that's what we do.
I love it. And, you are really a thought leader in the webinar space. When people have questions about webinars, I know many people consume your stuff and go to you. So people can go and, you talk about a mini webinar also. Tell people a little bit about the format people should think about when they're creating a presentation or webinar. And I just want to point out, Joel gives out so much information for free, like on his podcast, in his book, like I just mentioned, and online. So you can go to his website as well. And there's 2 different websites I think they can check out. They can check out joelerway.com. And they could also check out the webinaragency.com too, right?
Yeah. Yep. Those are two great spots to start.
So talk about, the concept of the mini webinar.
Well, so, in order to understand what the concept of the mini webinar is, you have to really take a step back and understand that, I don't know if you're like me, I overanalyze everything. I'm an engineer by trade, and so I go into geek mode, and it's a gift and a curse. It's a gift because I usually, once I find something that works, I understand it intimately well and at a really deep knowledge, deep level. But The curse is it usually takes me a long time to actually like take action because I have to overanalyze everything, right? So the good news is that when we launch something new, like when we initially went from just doing traditional hour to 2 hour long webinars, then we discovered mini webinars, and now we're doing infocasts. Like this isn't just like a flash in the pan type thing, like, oh, this is something new, like shiny object, shiny object, shiny object. Like going from webinars to mini webinars took like 3 years. Going from mini webinars now to understanding what infocasts can do, that was like another 5 years. So, in order to understand where to apply each of these mechanisms, like you have to understand one core thing. And the one core thing that, that you have to understand is the type of lead that you're attracting. You can have either marketing qualified leads or you can have sales qualified leads. So what are marketing and sales qualified leads? Well, simply put, a marketing qualified lead is somebody who is just generally interested in your topic that you were talking about, in your market. Like they've just identified themselves, they've self-identified themselves as, yep, I'm in your target market. That's it. There's no urgency involved for them to actually have a problem solved. There is no problem that they're even aware of right now. They're just interested in your content. And so, you look at top of funnel, middle of funnel, bottom of funnel, they would be at the top of funnel. So that's the larger pool of leads, like the largest pool of leads is your marketing qualified leads. There's nothing wrong with trying to acquire marketing qualified leads. And in fact, once you get to a certain stage in business, like you want to generate marketing qualified leads and feed your sales team. Well, then you've got sales qualified leads. So a sales qualified lead is somebody who has not only raised their hand and said, yes, I'm in your market, but they've also raised their hand and said, I like your process and I've got a problem that I need solved now. Okay. So it's going to be a much smaller segment than your marketing qualified leads. But the number one thing that has identified them as an SQL is they've got urgency involved. I'm ready to make a decision like in the immediate future. Okay. And so in order for me to this took me a long time to really understand that. So if we go back to the beginning of when I launched the webinar agency, all we did were the hour to 2 hour long webinars. Now, Jeremy, I don't know if you know what, the answer is to this question, but if I were to ask you, what is a long form webinar? Do you think that's to generate marketing qualified leads, or do you think it's to generate sales qualified leads?
I would guess sales qualified leads.
It's actually marketing. So like it does both, right? So like long form webinars are like the holy grail of like marketing. And this is, in my opinion, this is a lot of my clients, like they like webinars because they, when done correctly, they can educate somebody and then they can make an offer at the end, but they're incredibly difficult to get right. There's a lot of moving pieces, but they are actually a marketing qualified lead tool, meaning you will promote a webinar and saying, hey, I want to give you a free training to learn how to do X, Y, and Z, right? Free training. Hey, learn more. And at the end of it, a small segment are going to be like, okay, cool. Like this makes sense. Let's talk. But the vast majority of the people are still in information gathering mode. And this was a big misconception that I didn't understand back in the day. And so, when you go after marketing qualified leads, number one thing that you have to have on your side is time, meaning like you need to have time to nurture those people because the vast majority of those leads are not going to be ready to buy right now. So then I started to think, okay, well, if I want to accelerate the sales process, right, how do I do that? And this all came from the struggle that I had with my own personal webinar. So as the webinar agency, like I had to, eat my own dog food, right? So I ran my own webinars to get clients, et cetera, and it was the cobbler. It was the cobbler that didn't have any shoes. So like I had the worst converting webinar of all my clients, and I'm hiring consultants, I'm hiring people to pay, to review my webinar, hiring agencies to run ads, like the whole 9 yards. I spent probably $50,000 to $75,000 trying to get my webinar to work. Now, it was profitable, but like just barely. Like I had to pay my sales team, I had to pay, fulfillment costs, I had to pay for ads and all the coaching and consulting. And it wasn't, it just wasn't scalable. It wasn't at the point where I knew we could just, spend $1, make 3, 4, 5 back. So after about 1.5 years of like beating my head against the wall trying to get this thing to work, I said, you know what I'm going to do? I read this book. It was called How to Create an Irresistible Offer by Bob Bly. And Bob's a super
I've had
smart
Bob
guy.
on the podcast. Yeah.
Super smart guy. Love Bob because he gave me the single biggest aha moment in my entire, entrepreneurial career. On page 2 or 3 of that book, there's a chart. I love Bob to death. I love his work, but man, he speaks at like a grade 12 level. I need to comprehend at like a grade 1 level. So I almost skipped over this chart, but this chart explained the difference in cost per, like it explained how cost per acquisition works as it relates to the type of content you produce. Okay. So this chart said performance degradation as brand content increases and offer content.
This is more like college level, not grade 12.
Exactly. So in a nutshell, he was saying, if you publish a piece of content that is primarily brand driven and doesn't have an offer in it or doesn't have a call to action, your cost per acquisition is going to be the highest. If you publish a piece of content that is primarily offer driven, your cost per acquisition will be the lowest. There was some other stuff. He kind of went in a grading scale, but that was the gist of the message. I'm like, oh my God.
He's basically saying, make an offer is what he
said. Exactly. He's, so like to summarize it, you nailed it, Jeremy. It's like, if you want, do less marketing, make more offers. If you want more clients, do less marketing, make more offers. And I think, we get in this cycle of like just wanting to, educate, like as educators, what a lot of us are, right? Especially if you're a podcaster, you're a content creator, we're educators, but we want to give. We like to teach, we like to inspire, we like to tell stories. But, at some point you got to make an offer. And so I read that. It was I clear as day, Jeremy. I remember this clear as day. I was laying in bed, awake, staring at the ceiling fan with the book right there. It was like page 3. It was 11 o'clock at night. As soon as I read that, I said, I got it. I get it now. I slammed the book shut, jumped out of my bed, ran downstairs, fired open the laptop, and I created what is now called, I didn't know this at the time, but it was the first version of what I call a power offer. And I said, I'm going to publish this to my social media feed. Not going to look at it until tomorrow morning, and we'll see what happens. Go to sleep. I wake up the next morning. I had like 30 or 40 people raising their hand saying, hey, let's talk. That offer list was awesome. Let's talk. And by the end of, within 48 hours, I had closed 2 $25,000 clients. One had paid in full. The other was on the wait list. And the rest is history. So I know there's a long drawn out answer of what's a webinar, mini webinar, infocast, but like the premise, I can't just give you the tools without understanding where they apply to. And if you don't understand what a marketing qualified lead and a sales qualified lead is, which is urgency, then none of that other stuff matters. So
that makes perfect sense. I mean, if you go through the webinar is designed to attract someone's interested in the marketing piece. And then by the end, you want to convert them from marketing qualified lead into a sales qualified lead. But if you just make the offer, according to what you said with Bob Bly, like if there's not an offer in there, like here's how to create a webinar, there's no offer, it's a marketing qualified lead. So once you make an offer, it's now a sales qualified lead. Can you give an example of a power offer, your power offer?
Yep. So I would say that, not all offers are created equal. Like offers, like you can have a free offer, like, registering for a webinar, that's an offer, right? It's, hey, give me your name and email. I'll send you to this free training, right? But we want to make an offer that's specific to work with us, right? So that first power offer that I mentioned earlier, I'll give you that as an example because that's the one that kind of like lit my world on fire and allowed me to never go hungry for leads ever again. That one was targeting course creators, and we were offering our webinar writing services for them. So I said, you know what? Bob says, do less marketing, make more offers. Here we go. This is what I'm going to say. So I published this script on my social media feed. And if you're listening right now, you can model it, do whatever you want. I mean, we have our own little mini offer for the power offer. And you can go to powerofferworkshop.com and you can learn how to write this, but I'll give you the script right now. Like this is what you will learn inside the course, and you can get some additional examples there. That first one that I wrote was, attention course creators, if I offered to write you a webinar guaranteed to convert in 24 hours or less, without you needing to worry about what to say or how to say it, so you can enroll more clients and more customers and clients now, like, would you take them up on that offer? That was it. Like, that was the power offer. I had a couple more lines of copy down below, but that was it. And that was how I landed two $25,000 clients for our agency in 48 hours. So it's attention, primary avatar. If I offer to get you some sort of result without ABC hurdles that they're facing, would you take me up on that offer? That is the power offer. That's the power question. It's all about getting them to think about a question, like getting them to start to engage with that with that idea. And if it's compelling enough, like, you will get hand raisers. I can't tell you how, like, we've had thousands of people take that power offer workshop training, and they've generated millions and millions and millions of dollars collectively just using that, just by putting the power offer out there. Like, it's wild. Like, that's probably the single, like, biggest needle mover that we've had in the, in terms of influence and impact in the industry. So I'm very proud of that. I'm very proud of being able to give that to the
People
world.
can check it out at powerofferworkshop.com. Is that a good place? Okay, cool. So check that out for sure. And then I'm wondering, what stage are people ideal to come to you, Joel? So when we're talking about, they go to the webinar agency, you mentioned course creators, which makes sense because they've already kind of figured out they have something to sell. I would think that someone who's just starting out is not a great fit. Maybe they're better for your courses, but from the agency side, you want someone who's kind of further down the path. So I can see how that's a fit. Listen, I have this course, I put my blood, sweat, and tears in it, and I want to sell more of this course. What's an ideal fit for you to come for the webinar agency piece? Where should they be at in their business?
Great question. It's less on qualifications of like where they're at in their business and more so qualification of their commitment level to themselves. Meaning, like, if they've made the decision that, yes, I'm going to be a full-time entrepreneur, like, I know this is what I want to do, like, it's do or die, we can work with them. Because we do work with a lot of, you can call them startup stage, you can call them early stage, but like, they've just got an idea and they need help turning that idea into something that's compelling that can actually go get clients, right? So like yes, we do webinars and mini webinars and infocasts. That's like the mechanism of what we do. But what we really do is we design offers, like, because it doesn't matter what mechanism we put in place. If it's got a horrible offer, horrible messaging, it's not going to convert. And so I would say it's more so like if you made the full commitment to be a full-time entrepreneur and really take this seriously, and you like what we say, like, you like my methodologies, you like the idea of the power offer, you like the idea of like a 10-minute mini webinar, then let's chat. I mean, like, we have different levels for different levels of service for all sorts of different types of people. But the first stage that we do with anyone is we create an offer for them. Like, before we even get them into, ongoing services, it's like, okay, first step, let's get an offer and let's get it to convert. So,
Joel, I've heard you say some of your most successful clients are open to changing their offer and pivoting their offer, right? So, because some people are attached to an offer, possibly.
Yes.
So can you talk about pivoting the offer? And I don't know if you can think of an example of someone who doesn't hold too tightly, because really the market speaks, right? If the market is not liking the offer, the market doesn't like the offer. You don't want it. So talk about pivoting the offer.
A couple of months ago, I was working with a client. His name is Russell Lundstrom. Love him to death. He's like super, super smart marketer. And some people make the false assumption that just because you're a great marketer that you can, market your own products and services. Like, we all need help, right? It's the expert's curse. You can't read the label from inside the bottle. I need help. I hire marketing consultants all the time. So anyway, I was working with Russell, and he was in one of my programs for about a year, and he was struggling. He was launching 60 or 70 different power offer iterations. And he's like, it's not hitting, but he never quit. and he never complained. Like, and I knew he was going to have success because there are people out there that, they hit adversity once, twice, 3 times, 5 times, 10 times. Like they're going to quit and they're going to, they're just going to say, oh, this stuff doesn't work. But Russell was like, no, I know this works. I've seen it happen. And, I get it. Like I'm just not hitting it. Right. And so he's going through and I'm like, Russell, I really think you should try to let's pivot the offer to this avatar. I really think that has a good probability of working. And so after about a year, he finally heeded that advice. And, he's like, all right, let's try this.
So almost like similar messaging, but different avatar.
Exactly. So he was trying to offer some form of marketing services to like Fortune 500 companies or Fortune 1000 companies, like targeting CEOs, targeting executives, and targeting them with Facebook ads. Is it possible? Yeah, it's happened in the past. Like we've had success with it. Is it the largest market out there? No. And so that's what the data was telling him. And I voiced my concern early on. I said, listen, I think you can have success, but I think it's going to be a slow burn. I said, if you can change your avatar and now like help other marketing professionals, like give them the skill sets that they need to go work with these Fortune 1000 companies or Fortune 500 companies, I think you've got a much bigger pie there. And I think you've got a really compelling offer. And I asked him, I said, is that something that you can do and you would want to do? He said, absolutely. That would be within my wheelhouse. I'm like, all right, cool. So about a year later, he finally did it. And he went from like not being able to really close anyone and just getting a trickle of leads coming through to doing 2 to 3 sales a day. So like his lead flow exploded, very similar messaging, just like making a 2 millimeter shift to a different avatar, same offer, same fulfillment. And it was just night and day difference. And so that's happened more times than I can count.
I love it. So in the beginning, I mean, I love how you said that because it doesn't just have to be the messaging. People can tweak the messaging until they're blue in the face, but just shifting to a different end user, it could just make all the difference in the world. No, so now he's putting that out, and there's a lot of one-on-one, probably talking on the phone with people, selling. When someone gets something like that working, what do you recommend next for them?
Yeah, if they get the lead flow coming in and they've got an offer that's converting, so they're closing at 20 to 30% of their phone calls, the very next step that they want to do is okay, at that point, you have to make a decision. What kind of business do you want to run? Okay, do you want to keep this as like a low-key lifestyle business where you're bringing in 30 to 50K per month? That's you, an assistant, and I don't know, maybe a part-time, staff member, which, you can totally do. Or do you want to take it to the next level where you grow this to a larger, a larger business, start bringing on some additional team members, delegate your sales calls, and build an operation around that. I mean, that's essentially where we've seen the choke point hit, is like you get to 30K per month, 50K per month, you're doing everything on your own. You have to make that decision now. Where do you want to go from here? Do you want to delegate your sales calls? Okay, you got to go find a salesperson, right? Do you want to bring on additional team members to support your fulfillment? It all depends. Like that, you have to make the decision pretty much right there. Otherwise, you're going to be limited on your growth and you're going to get burned out. And so that's the point.
If we zoom out for a second, Joel,
Yeah.
like for the Russell example, what does the funnel look like? Does he have a webinar that he's driving traffic to that's generating calls and then sales? Or what does the front end of that look like for him or in general?
Yep. So for him, it's the power offer ad. So it's an ad that attracts sales qualified leads. And so it's, right up front, it's saying, do you want my help with this? Do you want to work together? Yes or no? And if they click through, then they hit a landing page, and the landing page is all sales qualified lead messaging, which is very similar to like, hey, we're looking for clients to get this result. If you're interested, click here to apply or click here to learn more, right? And so it's very much, hey, this is a sales funnel. Okay, this is not register here to get a free PDF or free training or not. It's apply now. And so then, they opt in there, they start the application, they watch a mini webinar. It's like, here's a little bit more, here's some information on how we plan to fulfill on the promise. Because your power offer is just your promise. That's all it is. And so like, once you make that promise, that's your what. The next stage, if people make it past the what stage and they're interested, they want to know how do you fulfill on that promise. And that's what the mini webinar is all about. How do you fulfill on that promise? So they watch the mini webinar, fill out an application, and then they book a call. And that's it. I mean, so it's really, a 3-step funnel, 3 or 4-step funnel. I mean, with tech now, I mean, we've been able to kind of like minimize the number of pages. And so that's irrelevant, but like, you just want to make sure that you're making the offer up front, getting them to fill an application, book a phone call. That's it.
I've heard people having varying opinions on at what point do you give them the option to book a call. I'm wondering your take. You've probably seen, and probably it varies depending on the offer and the landing page, but I've seen it where, a contact page and then they follow up with that because it's a bigger commitment to obviously choose a time, just have them fill out a form, or do you have them choose a time? I love your thoughts on at what point do you actually introduce here, book a time? Yeah.
We will always have them fill out an application first before they book a call. There are some instances where we remove the call booking step. And this is the part where it now becomes more of an art than a science, because it varies with every single offer. We talked about what makes a sales qualified lead earlier on, and that's urgency. You take it a step further, there's different levels of urgency as well. Like, so people can be urgent, but then people can be like really urgent. Like, I don't have a better way of really explaining it other than that. But the more urgent the problem is, or the solution is that you're offering, usually the higher the show up rate on your calls. And so we'll always start out by getting them to book a call first. Then we look at, okay, what's the no-show rate? What's the lead quality? And that's where the artistic form comes in, because there's all sorts of different optimization triggers and levers that you can pull. But we'll always start by getting them to fill out an application and then book a call. And then optimization comes in. It's like, okay, cool. Do we remove the call booking step if the no-show rate is really high? Do we remove the call booking step and input another qualification step in the meantime? There's a lot of things that we can do, but we'll start by having them, fill out an application and book a call.
You mentioned Bob Bly's book, and there was a page that really resonated. You immediately changed something you're doing. So I wanted for your high ticket courses book. I don't know if you could just hold it up for a second, if you have it handy, and people can get it on Amazon. I don't know, can they get it on your website too, or should they just go to Amazon?
Yep, go to Amazon. That's the best place to get it. And if you want, especially if you want a physical copy of the book, every so often we give away the ebook copy on my website. But in terms of an evergreen standpoint, you can get it physically printed and shipped to you from Amazon. Yep.
The reason I ask about it is because what do people report to you being that light bulb when they check out your book, like you did with that Bob Bly page 3 or whatever it was? What's a light bulb moment or moments from your book that people report?
That's part of it. So that one story about Bob is like a 3-part sequence that I tell inside of the book, where it is the light bulb moment for me that I need to make the offer first, sales first, then marketing. And because everything leading up to that, and what a lot of people think is they think the Ascension Model. They think give away something for free, build the list, give value. Eventually somebody's going to buy. And it's true. Yes, that is true, but that's a numbers game. And it's a law of large numbers. And so I flipped it on its head. I said, no, I want to go the descension route, because, I also give this, Chet Holmes wrote a book called The Ultimate Sales Machine. I reference that in the book as well. He talks about the buyer's pyramid. And, the short answer of this is that you've got 10% of your market that's ready to buy right now. Everybody listening right now, if you're listening right now, you have 10% of your market that's ready to buy right now. They will buy, or they will consider buying if you can make a compelling enough offer. And so that, combined with Bob's book, the light bulb moment went off for me saying, screw it. Okay, yeah, I know that's the smallest segment of my audience, but there's probably plenty of people to go fish there, right? And so that to put where the rubber met the road was when I was running my long form webinar. The problem that I ran into was that I was overeducating my market, meaning I
mean, is that
underestimated.
expected from an engineer?
Yes.
I mean,
yes,
that's
that
kind
is
of your,
expected.
that's kind of your nature, right?
It is. It is. And, you know, I underestimated how large my ready to buy market size was. And I started to think about it. I'm like, well, how many people have, you know, if my ideal avatar is somebody who's probably already bought a webinar software, they've already tried to write a webinar themselves. They, you know, have probably tried and failed. Like even just looking at the software user base, like those are my potential customers, like the people who are ready to buy right now. And I was completely going after the unaware market. I was trying to educate them on why webinars were the greatest thing since sliced bread, why you need a webinar, and, you know, trying to sell why webinars, when I could have just gone after the webinar audience that they already know they want a webinar, but they are just trying, and they've tried to create one themselves and they failed. And so I overlooked that. And when I shifted that, I said, nope, screw it. I'm just going after them and I'm going to make them an offer. It was a game changer for me. It really was.
Yeah. I love how you talk about the, you know, the descension model, because a lot of people do talk about the ascension model. And I encourage anyone to check out your site and consume some of the information, because you do talk about this on there too. I love to talk about a few examples, Joel. A few examples. Well, one people can maybe, if they're start more in the startup stage, they can relate to, and then one, if they just want to pour fuel on the fire, they can relate to. So one of my favorite latest books is the one that Alex Hormozi wrote, which I think it was $100 million offers, it was called. And talk about Alex and some of the things that you worked on together.
Yeah, Alex, super smart guy, young kid, kind of, the diamond in the rough, right? He's just really, really inspiring story. So Alex and I got introduced to each other back in 2015, 2016. We were part of a mastermind together. And I was working, I was in that mastermind. I was known as the webinar guy. So, handful of members in the group would come to me like, hey, I heard you're the webinar guy. Let's do some work together. Alex was one of those guys. And this was prior to him launching his $100 million business, right? His $100 million offer, venture, or what led him onto the rocket ship, right? So he came to me, and at the time, Alex was like flying all over the country, and he was helping people. He was helping people launch their gyms, like really like fill up their gyms. Like he was extremely skilled at it, right? He's a rock star salesperson. He had the marketing background as well. But he came to me, he's like, hey, I really want to launch this online program, this group coaching program. And I heard I've been advised to do a webinar to sell it. Heard you're the webinar guy. So we started working together. And at that time I had tested out the first version of the mini webinar and was doing very well for myself. And I said, Alex, I think we should really try this, because you're like, gym owners, they're extremely time poor. They have no time in the world to sit down and watch an hour-long webinar, right? He's like, all right, let's do it. So we created a power offer. We created a mini webinar. And within the first, I think it was like 6 months, and I mean, the testimonial's in my book, but within the first 6 months, we went from $0 to $400,000 per month. I mean, he was booking calls for like $5 a piece, $10 a piece, $12 a piece. And Alex is an extremely skilled salesperson. He was closing like 70 or 80% of them at, this is like early stage startup of this program. Like this was like the start of $100 million offers, right? Was when we were working together. And so, so he was, I remember we were going back and forth. We were texting back and forth, because like I would get applications, and I was scaling up my applications, and he was getting them. He's like, man, I got another one. Just got another one. And so we had this little competition going, and I'll never forget it. But yeah, so within 6 months, he was doing $400,000 a month with that program, and obviously he's gone on to do some really incredible things. And so, but that was, it was, I was honored to have a part in that launch, and that was all because we made offers, and even before we did that, we did try a long form webinar at first. We spent, I don't know, $300 or $400, and we could tell it was just going to be a dud. And that's what I told him. I said, I think we need to shift this. Let's flip it on its head and let's try this direct approach. And it just night and day is not even the proper contrast to give the two tests.
I love it. And
Yep.
then you worked, talk about Boyd.
Yeah. So Boyd, I have a few clients that are like the shining case study of like what you do when, going from the Ascension model to the Descension model and how much of a shift that can make. So Boyd is a he works in the information technology space. So he helps employees in the IT space level up their career and get them a six-figure job in cybersecurity. It's a very niche field, and he can get them, six and multi-six-figure careers. So for the first 8 months, he had been trying to sell this program. He was following the Ascension model, giving away a free report, trying to sell them on like a $7 membership or a $300 course or a $500 course. And I think I remember him telling me at one point, over the first like 6 or 8 months, I think he only made like $800 or like $1,000. So then he found some of my content and he saw the Descension path in which I talk about. And then he learned about power offers. He's like, man, this just makes a whole lot of sense. So we worked with our agency. We wrote his offers for him. We said, okay, this is where I want you to go. And I want you to change the price of your program from $500 to $3,000 minimum. I said, you're helping people land six and multi-six-figure careers. There's value here. And a lot of people in the education space, in the course space, like that's a big jump for them. Like sometimes they go from like $50 programs. I tell them like, you got to go to $3,000. And it's like, they get really nervous. And they get really nervous. So anyway, he's like, okay, I'll do what you say. The first month that he launched.
Did it take any coaxing, Joel? As far as like, hey, you should go from this $100 to $3,000. Was there anything you said to help him shift the mindset? Or he's like, I trust you at that point?
If somebody's in the low ticket mindset, like $100 or even $500, you just have to walk them through the economics, like the unit economics of how difficult it is to make that work, right? Because they probably already bought into the fact they need to run paid ads. I'm like, so if you're selling $100 course, like you need to be acquiring customers for under $100, or you need to, do back end offers and upsells and blah, blah, blah. And once I explain that you need to be great at copywriting, offer writing, funnel building, media buying, email marketing, like it's essentially, I broke it down at one point. It's like 8 or 10 specialties that you need to be a master at to make the low ticket stuff work, like right out of the gate. It just doesn't make sense. I mean, it's a very compelling argument, and it's just the truth. I mean, I spent $250,000 of my own money trying to do, like, once I finally got to the stage of writing a book, which took me 7 years, by the way. Like, I didn't start out writing a book. I spent $250,000, and it still wasn't as profitable as like the other models that I teach. And so, with Boyd, though, Boyd was very open to it. He was very receptive. He's like, okay, I get it. I'll start at $3,000 because I'm comfortable doing that. But that first month, I mean, he went from $0 to $40,000 in month one. Now, I might be off a little bit with the numbers, but it was substantial. Now, mind you, he had only made about $1,000 in the first 8 months. And when he flipped it on its head, going to, $40,000, it might've been within like the first 30 days of launching. It was a game changer. And Boyd is also very systematic, and he's he's an intelligent guy, like really, really proud of what he's done, because that went from $40,000 in the first 30 days. Then he, in about a year, he scaled that to $250,000 per month. Then he went from $250,000 per month to $1 million a month in like 8 months time frame between those two milestones. He's crushing it right now. It's a really, really inspirational story. Obviously, to get to those levels, $100 million in revenue, $1 million a month in revenue, it takes more than just a compelling offer, but you can't get there without a compelling offer, right? It's like, that's number one. That's rule number one.
Joel, some people may hear like, this seems like way out of my reach, way out of my realm. Talk about Susan, as far as, maybe a little more relatable as far as, going from someone thinking of going from 0 to $1 million a month or something like that.
Yeah. Susan's a great story. And Susan is actually more relatable to me because have I ever done $1 million in a month? No, my business has never done $1 million in a month. I choose to live a lifestyle of business. I've had the opportunity to build a big team and to really take it to the next level and go, chase that multi-8-figure business. Tried it at one point, and the lifestyle that I saw in my path to go get that, it just was nothing that I wanted. So I live
which
the
I want you to,
life.
after you talk about Susan, I'd love for you to talk about the concept of the semi-retired life.
Yeah. So Susan came to me and she'd been following my stuff for a while. She purchased one of my webinar programs back in the day, and she was in the process of reinventing herself. So she was a seasoned, entrepreneur, business veteran, had launched multiple offers in the past, but she had kind of shut down her previous life, her previous businesses, and was ready to reinvent herself in this new realm. So she reached out to me and she's like, "Hey, I've been following your stuff. I really like what you're doing. I get this idea, the power offer and the mini webinar." And so she signed up and she's like, "I really just want to run, a one-woman band, right? I just want to keep it low key, just me doing my thing and get a steady stream of clients coming in." So she followed the methodology, and within the first couple of months, she was doing, $30,000 a month. And she sent me this message one day. She's like, "Hey, I just wanted to say huge thanks to you guys. This is a big game changer for me. I never told you this in the past, but like I was going through some rough stages in my life when I wanted to reinvent myself. And now here I am sitting by the pool," or what did she say? It's in the book, but I think she said she was coaching her clients in her underwear or something. Like, it was just really funny. Like, she's relaxing, living in California, like, coaching her clients in her underwear. I'm like, okay, cool. Like, whatever floats your boat is it's up to you. But that's the beauty of running these types of businesses, particularly in the education space. I help anyone who sells with appointments. The vast majority of my audience is, coaching programs, high ticket offers, high ticket courses, you name it. But you get to do that when, if you're in this niche, it's a wild niche, it really is. It's a great niche to be a part of. Nobody really knows it exists. I mean, I walk around town. I ran this event for military veterans last week for the 4th of July. And so I bought out a coffee house for anyone who served, active or former or retired. And I bought out a coffee house for 4 days over the 4th of July weekend. So if you served, you could go in there and get anything you wanted, right? And so it made the front page of the paper. We got media coverage. It was really, really cool. And a lot of people came up like, "Well, so what do you do?" And I'm like, I just have to tell them I run a marketing agency, because anytime I go further down the rabbit hole, they're like, "What's a high ticket course? What's a webinar?" Like, don't worry about it. Like, it's this niche that nobody really understands. And, but it's great. I love the world we live in.
Joel, there's so much more we go into, but I want to encourage everyone, check out your podcast, go to webinaragency.com, check out joelerway.com, check out High Ticket Courses, the book on Amazon. And Joel, I want to be the first one to, thank you so much.
All right. Thanks for your time, man. It's been a blast.
What I got, you can't buy. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sailing right now. I'm feeling like $100 grand.